All right, joining me once again here on the Matthew Filipowicz Show is my good buddy, Greg Kaufmann. Greg is the writer of This Week in Poverty, the weekly column for The Nation magazine, which focuses on the plight of the poor. You can find it at thenation.com. You can also find Greg on Twitter at Greg Kaufmann with 2 N's. Greg, thank you so much for being on the show again.
Great to be speaking with you again, Matt.
All right, so Greg, a good deal of the fiscal cliff talk is a bunch of bull. A lot of it is very bogus.
Right.
However, the cliff that the poor are actually facing when it comes to expiring unemployment insurance is not bogus at all. It's very real and very pressing. So why don't you tell us all about it?
You're absolutely right. And so it's surprising that there hasn't been more conversation about it. There are 5 million unemployed people who've been looking for work for more than 6 months now. And if Congress doesn't extend unemployment insurance before the new year, then between Christmas and the New Year's, 2 million people are going to immediately lose their benefits. You kind of can't make that stuff up, right over the holidays. And then by the end of the first quarter of 2013, another 1 million. And then throughout 2013, if this isn't renewed, more than 5 million people are going to lose their benefits. Now, from a poverty perspective, this is really important. We know that unemployment insurance keeps people out of poverty. In 2010, 3.2 million people were kept out of poverty, above the poverty line, which, remember, is just about less than $18,000 for a family of 3. 2011, that number dropped to, it just kept 2.3 million people out of poverty, including 620,000 children. And the reason that it declined somewhat in having a positive effect is because Congress didn't extend a provision in the Recovery Act that had provided just an extra $25 a week in benefits. So, the fact is, if Congress doesn't act on this, we're going to see that reflected in the poverty numbers in 2013.
What's really shocking about this is how there seems to be very little urgency about this at all. And these are millions of people who are going to be affected by this, and yet it doesn't seem to be something that anyone seems to think that, we need to have this done in the matter of the next 3 weeks or so when this actually has to go through. Right.
It is incredible because these benefits are really a lifeline for people. I mean, you're talking about just an average weekly benefit is $290. And most people are making just 30 cents on the dollar of what they earned in their regular work. And there's this stigma that people are just sitting around living off this and not looking for work. And I don't know how anyone just lives off $290 a week. And the fact is that actually people have to certify that they're looking for a job and this sort of thing. And there was actually a study done that, and I can't remember who did it, but that showed that people getting unemployment are actually looking more aggressively for work because they have to they have to document that. So I'll give you an example. I talked to this guy, Richard Crow. He's in Wintersville, Ohio, which is about 40 miles west of Pittsburgh. He's 54 years old, okay? He worked in a steel mill for 34 years since he graduated from high school as a maintenance technician and an operator. So, he's a skilled worker. New ownership came in. 13 months later, they declared bankruptcy, goes to court, the worker's contract gets tossed out, the guys walk away with millions. Sounds like a certain recent presidential candidate. He wasn't involved in this one, but we've heard a lot about this. But so that was back in May, okay? Since that time, Richard has applied for 157 jobs. He's extended his search he's applied for jobs in Nevada and South Carolina. What happens to him is sort of characteristic of what goes on with, you got to remember that most, these long-term unemployed workers are just disproportionately over 50. Okay, because what happens is, so he goes to apply for new steel jobs, and they say they're hiring 20-year-olds with no experience because that's cheaper for them. Right. And then he'll go to a place where he doesn't have experience, and they'll say, you don't have any experience. An example of that, which, and I find talking to people, they try to keep a good sense of humor, and he said he went into UPS to apply for a job delivering packages. And the woman looks over his resume, And he says, I got everything on there. He's telling me, and he says, she looks at it and she says, wow, you worked in the steel mill your whole life. And he says, that's right. And she says, well, do you have any experience delivering packages? And he was like incredulous. He said, to me, saying, how would I have an experience delivering packages? I wanted to tell her, yeah, once a year I dress up as Santa and I deliver packages. Like, this is a guy who's worked his whole life,
Yeah.
And he's receiving $382 per week, which he says covers his car payment and his utilities. His wife works a low-wage job for somebody local that they asked me not to mention for fear of retaliation. They put their kid through college. But his fear now is, he says, if I lose this, I'm going to lose everything. I'm going to lose my home. And he's incredulous that that people stigmatize people as not working, and B, that the country would possibly turn its back on people who are so desperate at this time.